So welcome to this week's Optimum Health Clinic Facebook Live. And this week I wanted to talk about the importance of being methodical on the recovery path. And this is something which is, hang on, microphone has fallen down. This is something which is probably not very glamorous, and some of the things that we talk about which can be kind of exciting and engaging, it's a bit more on the dull side. But one of the tendencies that we can have is when we start getting inspired to change things and we start getting ideas of things we want to try in terms of new approaches. Perhaps we start doing work with a nutrition practitioner, we start introducing supplements, or we start working with a psychology practitioner and we want to suddenly start revolutionizing everything that's kind of happening. The tendency can be that we want to change everything at once, and that we want to just kind of gung-ho kind of throw ourselves into it. Or indeed, if we're adjusting or shifting a protocol that we're doing, the tendency can be that we want to stop doing everything at once. Or if we're bouncing the boundaries and we're increasing our activity level, the tendency can be that we want to just kind of, we do something once or twice, we feel a bit better, we just want to kind of drive on forwards. And so what I wanted to just to talk briefly about is the importance of being methodical. And what I mean by being methodical is by doing things strategically, doing things gradually, one piece at a time, having enough time to gather the information and the feedback from the thing that we're doing, and then using that information and feedback to then take the next step. So, for example, when we put people on supplement programs at the clinic, one of the things that we are very careful to advise people to do is to start things gradually, to introduce things one thing at a time. And that's deliberate. Because if, for example, there's some kind of reaction to a particular supplement, then we know which supplement it is, as opposed to the fact that we've just started doing loads of things at once. Or if, for example, we are stopping taking things, sometimes it takes a while for the body to adapt to the fact we've been taking something. It's also being methodical in the sense that if we have committed to doing something, we're consistent to it. So, for example, if we are on a supplement program, making sure we remember to take our supplements. And if that means we're going to be away from the house, getting a little kind of supplement pot or whatever, and planning it in advance. Same can be the case with food, that if we're on a particular restrictive diet, that making sure that we plan to have the food that we're going to need at the times that we're going to need it. It's also true in terms of bouncing the boundaries. And this is something I've done a separate Facebook Live on. It's something that also we'll talk more about in these sessions. But the importance of, let's say, for example, I was using an analogy with a patient this afternoon, that it's like if you imagine you're in a trench in the First World War and you want to expand forwards, you want to kind of take more ground. You wouldn't just get the troops to get out of the trench and just run as far as they can before they start taking enemy fire to dig another trench further on. What you would do is you would go forwards 10, 20 meters and then dig another trench and kind of embed there. And if that, it comes under fire, to retreat back to the trench that we know is safe. And that's the same way that I think we're talking about approaching bouncing the boundaries. That we gradually, we increase our activity, we've got a safe place to fall back to if we're doing too much too quickly. We don't just charge the future and do as much as we can until we start getting symptoms and crash. So there's something about being really methodical, as much as it can be boring and it can be tedious and it can be against the sense that part of us that just wants to go, sod this, I just want to get on with my life, that we recognize that we need to gather the information from each step that we take to decipher that information to be able to sensibly plan and plot our next steps. I think also remembering that things are always changing. So, for example, things that are true at one stage of recovery are not necessarily still true at another stage of recovery. So, for example, there are activities which give us energy, there are activities that are neutral, and there are activities that can drain our energy. And an activity at stage 2 of recovery, which was draining our energy, may be an activity at stage 3 that gives us energy. An example of that might be that going for a 20-25 minute walk, let's say, at stage 2, for us is too much, and it causes us to crash and get more symptoms. And yet, further down the recovery path at stage 3, going for that walk actually may give us energy and make us feel better. And so, in a sense, and again, this is a separate whole kind of thing, but the breakthrough at one stage can become the limitation at the next stage. So the breakthrough at stage 2 might have been disciplining ourselves to not push ourselves and do that walk. But that now becomes at stage 3, that's now the limitation, and we're ready to take that next step. So we want to be careful and methodical in the way that we change things, the way that we test things and try things to gather the feedback in the information. Also, if we're increasing activity and bouncing the boundaries, one of the other things that can be important is if we have a delayed fatigue response, it can take several days for that response to kick in. So we need to allow those couple of days to start to get the feedback that perhaps we did too much. And if we keep trying to sustain at the new level we're at and not give time for the feedback, by the time we get the feedback, we may have done way more than we should have been doing. So again, it's being methodical, and in a sense, it's developing a certain, what supports being methodical is developing a certain amount of being patient. And that means not rushing, that means waiting for information and feedback to come through. It means not just charging off in the direction we want to because we're frustrated and fed up. It also means engaging a certain amount of logic and a certain amount of strategic thinking. Like for example, having a diary at certain stages, having a diary of symptoms, or having a diary of the things we need to remember to do at the times we need to remember to do them, with an alarm on our phone or whatever it may be to remind us to do those things. And so just being methodical, being patient, thinking things through, not being reactive, not kind of getting to the point where we just go, sod it, I'm so fed up, I'm just going to go and drive myself and push myself. That we take each step cautiously, patiently, sensibly, and not in a kind of, and I'm not suggesting here, approaching things in a way where we have a kind of we're overthinking and we're creating more anxiety by the kind of worrying about things. That's also not being strategic and being methodical. That's getting caught in a pattern around things. But just gathering the information, making sense of the information, taking the next step with the information, and being patient and being gentle in the process to do that. So hopefully that's been useful. I am trying to keep these videos to around kind of 10 minutes or so. So feel free to post questions underneath and I'll keep an eye on the comments and questions. But yeah, I hope that's been useful, and thank you everyone for watching. Bye-bye for now.